So I come from this organization called Quixote's Cove, which is a bookshop. It works in terms of literature, art. We do a lot of programming around storytelling. We've been around for about 10 years now, and the reason we sort of started was because we thought it'd be a great idea to hang around books, and also because storytelling itself is something that we believe is probably one of the most powerful tools that we have in terms of allowing and sort of encouraging people to get on board and sort of change the ways that we've been operating in this world so far. The name, which is a bit weird, Quixotes, comes from this book called Don Quixote, which was written about 30 years ago in Spain by this guy called Miguel Cervantes. It's about this guy that reads a lot of books and then goes crazy. So in his craze, he goes out and tries to save the world, which I guess a lot of us try to do as well. In the book, he largely fails. He fails consistently in terms of whatever he's trying to do. This is the most popular incident from the book, where he thinks like these windmills are giants and charges at them and tries to defeat them. Instead falls off his horse, breaks a few bones. So that's sort of the kind of character that we see in ourselves in some ways, because the kind of, at times, like it feels kind of impossible to be able to change the way that the world is sort of operating. When you see the kind of pollution that exists in the world, the kind of corruption, the kind of lack of care for people that exists in the world. So one of the best ways that we've found to sort of address that and make sense of that for ourselves as well as for other people is through stories. The other two organizations that are listed here, Satori Center for the Arts is our non-profit wing through which we operate a number of projects which I'll go into in a moment. The other group, the Water Warriors, is a spoken word poetry group that we work with that also is centered around storytelling and sort of trying to address issues that we face one person at a time. So the reason that I'm here actually to talk about is because of this project. This is the US Embassy's book bus. It's a mobile library. We run 2 of these. The illustration that you see is of the bigger one. We have a smaller one as well that normally operates in the valley. And this one operates wherever roads take us in Nepal. What we've done so far, just to give you I'm going to run through like the things that we do and then we get into the actual talk of education in a bit. This project has been around for about 5 years. We've traveled all over Nepal. All the purple patches you see are places that we've been. And we've worked with the numbers are sort of there, foreign schools, a lot of students. We are constantly traveling. We've traveled with WCN a couple of times and done some programming together as well. So one of the things that we do is when you go to a place, we try to like set up, this is a mobile library, so like what we do is we try to set up a library. The bus opens up, you can sort of go inside the bus, read books. There's the side of the bus also opens, so you can sort of browse the books from the outside as well. But what we do is, and what's sort of the core idea for us is to think about the library as a community space. How do you create communities where people are interested in doing things for the community? How do you create an education system where kids are invested not just in terms of like, okay, I want to get my degree so I can get a job, but also think about the ways that education can make a difference to their lives, to the lives of people around them, to their friends, to the community that they grew up in. So a lot of what we do is sort of, the books are a tool in terms of getting access to information, learning new ideas, but at the end of the day, it's the people that actually do the change. Unless the people are convinced that it's something that they need to do, that they want to do, you're never going to have any change. A good example of that is like a while back, the government instituted this no horn policy in Nepal. And for a few days it sort of worked in the sense that there was a market drop in terms of horns. But nowadays it's sort of gone back to normal. Everyone's honking like crazy again. So one of the things that I want to point out is the intention not to honk has to come from people. You can't institute a law and think that people will just obey it. I mean, you can enforce it to a degree where it becomes like a criminal punishment idea. But these things shouldn't be required as legal tools in that sense. It should come because you're concerned about the eardrums of other people. You're concerned about like the pollution, the noise pollution that you create. So how do you go about doing that is part of what we're sort of concerned about through the book was. So a lot of our programming is sort of geared towards that. We go into schools, we go into communities, we sort of do a variety of different workshops that are around science, education, literature, art, all geared with the idea of getting people to be more conscious about the things that are around them. So while we've been traveling, one of the things that we do is we partner with a lot of different organizations that are working in education, including WCN. And one of the things that we constantly get from these communities is, oh, you've come with like an environment program, or you've come with a science program, but what about this other program, this art program that you do? The people, mostly schools and colleges, are very keen in terms of sort of identifying new ways of teaching, new ways of sort of engaging the kids and getting them involved. So what we did was, a couple of years, 2-3 years ago, we started this fair called the Innovation in Education Fair. The idea for the fair is to basically bring together all these different organizations that we've worked with in the past, that work in various capacities within education. So we have organizations that use dance as a form of education. We have organizations that use science as a means of education, well, science as in hands-on making as a means of education. We have artists, we have a whole variety of people, psychosocial counselors, all the full range of kind of people that you'd want to work in education. And the idea for the fair is basically to get schools and colleges to sort of meet these people. It's a space for networking, it's a space for getting to know these organizations and sort of trying to figure out what can work in your school, in your community. In about a month, we'll be going to Rasua, where we're going to do the next year's edition of the fair. We're going to be working with the local municipality, the Kalika rural municipality there, and working with about 17 schools in that region. So all the teachers are going to be there, and one of the things that we try to focus on is, again, trying to keep it local, trying to keep it within the community. So how do you make education something that is happening around? KTK Wealth is a great example of something that sort of tries to do that. How do you incorporate your local environment into your education curriculum, whether it's through the languages that are spoken in the region, whether it's through the biodiversity in the region, whether it's through the kind of political structures that existed within the system, whether it's through the different groups, women's groups, environment groups, labor unions. How do you make education something that is not something that you just do in the classroom, but is something that is integrally linked with everything that's happening around you? How do you make it so that the things that you're learning in the classroom have direct applicability in terms of the community that you're sort of growing up in? Which brings me to this question: what is education? What do we pursue education for? All of you are sort of students, I assume. Well, most of you are students, I assume. Undergraduate and graduate, I believe. I'd like you guys to sort of reflect on this for a moment. Think about the 10, now I guess 14, 15, 16 years of education that you guys might have had by now. And think about why was it set up that way? Why was it structured that way? Why did you have to go in the classroom? Why did you have to wear a uniform? Why did you have to sing the national anthem every day? Why did you have PT in the morning? Why did you have lunch breaks at particular times of 45 minutes? Why were classrooms 45 minutes, for instance? So thinking about that, we'll do a little exercise in a bit, but please do start sort of ruminating on this for a minute. I'll just define progressive education in terms of how we approach it. It's an education philosophy that believes in lifelong learning, emphasizes on hands-on learning experiences, developing critical thinking and problem solving. There are different philosophies of education. So the kind of philosophy that you sort of adhere to defines the kind of experience that you create in the classroom. It might not feel directly relevant in many ways to think these high, big ideas and the very personal interactions that happen in the classroom between student and teacher, but they do influence each other. For that, I'd like to do a little exercise with you guys, if you guys are willing to participate. What I'd like to do is I sort of want you guys to pair up with whoever's sitting next to you. And we'll do two. One of you will do the why, the other of you will do the how. This is how we're going to do it. The why is, we'll use it as a reflective tool upon your own education. So think about your own education, those of you that want to do the why. So in terms of the techniques, why was the technique that you were taught in? Just think about maybe your 10th grade education, since back then SLC was the big thing, right? So what was the technique that you used or that was taught in classroom? What were the strategies that were sort of shared with you? What was the method of teaching that was used? What sort of learning theory do you think that came from? And what sort of pedagogical approach did it take? And why, obviously. So why was it adopted? In terms of the how, the other person, I want you to sort of take on a stance. So say education is, one of the things that the Nepal government has is, our education is to get Nepal to become a middle income country by 2030. That's one of the sort of goals that the national educational plan has. You can take that as your sort of guiding philosophy, or you can say education is to, I don't know, make children think for themselves, or make children problem solvers, or anything that you think is integral, what you believe is integral to education. And sort of think about and go down the list. So if you sort of think education is like the government, is to make Nepal a middle-income country, what sort of pedagogical tool would you take? What sort of learning theory would you take? What sort of method would you take? You don't have to answer all of them, just you can try to like address as many of them as you can. Can you do that? We'll take like 5 minutes and do that. This doesn't have to be perfect, but I just want you to sort of get into that process of thinking about what it entails in terms of the classroom. Okay? If you have any questions on this? No? Shall we do it? If I had a whiteboard, I'd write it down, but I don't have a whiteboard. Why don't you guys write it down, and then I'll ask some of you to share as well. Okay. Can I get some volunteers? Anyone want to share? If there are no volunteers, I'll just pick. Go ahead. Mic's on. Sorry. Distracted.
नमस्ते, मेरो नाम चाहिँ अञ्जन सुडारी। म चाहिँ गोल्डन गेट कलेजबाट मास्टर गर्छु। अनि हामीले चाहिँ यो डिस्कस गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ प्राय हामी सबैको कमन जस्तै खालको एजुकेसन सिस्टम थियो। त्यो एजुकेसन सिस्टममा चाहिँ अब टिचरहरूले चाहिँ कोर्सको बारेमा चाहिँ गएर लिटरेचर भनेको चाहिँ थ्योरिटिकल कुराहरू मात्रै सिकाउने खालको प्र्याक्टिसहरू अहिलेसम्म भइरहेको छ। र अब त्यसपछि स्टुडेन्टले लर्निङ गरेर आएन अनि अथवा उनीहरूले कतिसम्म सिक्यो त्यो इभ्यालुएसन त हुन्छ, तर त्यसपछि हाम्रो त्यो खालको चाहिँ म्यान पावर कन्ट्रीमा निड छ कि छैन त्यो खालको एउटा इभ्यालुएसन कन्ट्रीले पनि गरेको छैन। खासमा कस्तो खालको म्यान पावर चाहिँ कुन खालमा कुन एजुकेसनमा चाहिँ कति खालको म्यान पावर चाहिँ प्रोडक्सन गर्ने अनि त्यसमा चाहिँ पहिला एउटा कन्ट्रीले एउटा प्लान गर्नुपर्छ। अनि फर्स्टमा चाहिँ एजुकेसन दिने सिस्टममा चाहिँ स्टुडेन्टको लागि चाहिँ 4-5 क्लाससम्म चाहिँ टिचरले स्टुडेन्टलाई सिकाउने बेसिक नर्म्सहरू भनेको चाहिँ त्यो वर्डहरूसँगदेखि लिएर सबै बेसिक कुराहरू सिकाउँदै गर्दाखेरि त्यो स्टुडेन्टसँग चाहिँ कस्तो खालको चाहिँ इन्ट्रेस्ट छ, त्यो साइकोलोजिकल्ली त्यो स्टुडेन्ट चाहिँ कतापट्टि चाहिँ कुन सेक्टरपट्टि चाहिँ ओरिएन्टेड छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ इभ्यालुएसन गरेर उसलाई त्यो सेक्टरमा चाहिँ मोटिभेसन गराएर अनि त्यो अनुसारको चाहिँ 5 देखि 10 क्लाससम्ममा चाहिँ त्यो सेक्टरसँगको बेसिक फाउन्डेसनको एजुकेसन चाहिँ उसलाई दिएर अनि अरू त्यस पछाडिको फर्दर आउनेमा चाहिँ चाहिँ स्पेसिफिक एजुकेसनमा चाहिँ मुभ गर्न सक्यो भने चाहिँ प्रोडक्सन चाहिँ राम्रो प्रोडक्सन र कन्ट्रीलाई चाहिँ मिडेबल प्रोडक्सन र त्यो अनुसारको कन्ट्रीको पनि आफ्नो दायराभित्रको प्रोडक्सन भएपछि कन्ट्री चाहिँ आफै मुभ गर्न सक्छ। त्यो चाहिँ हाम्रो कुरा। थ्याङ्क यू।
Thank you. Anyone else from the back here? No? I can just pick someone. If not.
Hello, I'm Vinita Gaurav from Kathmandu University, Master in System Development. मलाई चाहिँ त्यो स्ट्राटेजिस्ट र टेक्निक अबको केस आउने स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूलाई कसरी गराउन सकिन्छ भन्ने बारेमा जस्तै हामीले स्कुलको बच्चाहरूलाई भनिन्छ नि ग्रास इज ग्रिन भनेर सिकाइन्छ होइन, त्यसरी रटाउनुको सट्टा चाहिँ बरु एउटा फुलबारीमा लगेर होइन हरियो घाँस भनेको हरियो हुन्छ, फुल भनेको यस्तो रङको हुन्छ भनेर सिकाइयो, यो स्ट्राटेजी युज गर्यो भने चाहिँ उनीहरूलाई याद हुन्छ। अनि त्यस्तै गरेर मास्टर्स ब्याचलर लेभलकोमा चाहिँ अब थ्योरिजहरू पढिन्छ होइन, तर त्यस्तोमा के छ भनेर थाहा हुने थ्योरी रटे अनि पास गऱ्यो क्या, त्यो होइन केस स्टडीहरू गर्ने नेपालको केसमा कसरी इम्प्लाइ गर्न सकिन्छ त त्यो थ्योरीहरू भनेर चाहिँ त्यसरी गऱ्यो भने चाहिँ मेबी न्यू जेनेरेसनलाई सजिलो हुन्छ थ्योरी एप्लिकेसन।
Great, thank you. Since we're limited for time, I'll end our sharing that here. Just from the 2 points. One was an idea of taking kids into outside the classroom, basically, sort of showing them science in action in that sense. The other idea that the gentleman here shared was we need to sort of get kids to do things that they enjoy doing. जुन कुरा रमाइलो लाग्छ उनीहरूलाई त्यही कुरामा पढ्न दिनु पर्यो। Both of these are sort of built off, whether you're aware of it or not, there are like, pedagogy is the sort of broad term, but in terms of education there are like particular ways of thinking about education and particular ways of doing them. In the past, if some of you are old enough to have studied, for instance, the Mahendramala, which is like the old Nepali textbook, it had a particular idea of like what kind of citizen a Nepali should be. कस्तो खालको मान्छे हुनुपर्छ भनेर के कुरा मान्नुपर्छ के कुरा मान्नुहुन्न भनेर. One of the defects of that system was that it didn't really encourage people to think creatively. To create an education system that allows people to think of new solutions, to say like, this isn't working, we need to do this in a different way. Look at the air pollution outside, it's not working, we have to do something else. We can't like continue living like this. That sort of education system requires the teacher to approach the whole classroom in a different setup. You can't go there and just be like, this is what is knowledge. I am the holder of knowledge, and you are the ones that will get the knowledge from me. Knowledge is something that is created together on the idea of the classroom. It's something that you do as a means of changing things. Okay. Now, which brings me to one example of how this happens. The library. How many of you grew up with a library? After school, my library too? Primary school, my library? Yeah? Everyone? Okay, that's great. How many of you went to the library? Yeah? That's good. So, one of the things that sort of a traditional library is set up around is it's a place with books. You know? You go there, you pick out a book, you read. You're not supposed to make noise. Allah garnu hunna library ma भन्ने idea छ हैन. That one of the ideas for like sort of changing mindsets in that sense is to think about the library not as a place just where you sort of passively take information, but where you create information. The book bus is a library, but it's a library designed to create information, not a library designed to say, this is the information, take this, and you will become wise and I don't know, like Tulamansi. And for that, you have to create disruption. You have to sort of make people slightly uncomfortable. You have to create noise. You have to be comfortable with noise. You have to create like an environment where the rules can be broken. If you don't break the rules, then you don't create anything new. So, which brings me to the idea of the library. What we do is primarily think about how do you bring this disruption into schools? How do you create an environment where kids are allowed to creatively think? Because if you were raised, as most of us were, in terms of our SLCs, to memorize certain lines, know what Mahakavi Lakshmi Prasad said, and being able to write it in a particular way, it's not going to make you the next Mahakavi. You're just going to be another factory worker in that sense. You're just going to be an automated production machine. And solutions, problems are not addressed that way. If you see a problem and you continue to do the same thing to try to address the problem and it's not getting solved, then at some point you need to sort of think about, okay, maybe this is not the right way to do things. And at the moment, most of our educational processes are not built around that idea. They're built around like these test-taking ideas where the primary goal is to reproduce something that is in a guidebook. It's not built around how does it influence you yourself? And the way to do that has to start in the classroom. You can't do it. You can't expect like people that have gone through 16 years of an education, 20 years of an education, who've been trained to reproduce, regurgitate, replicate, and think that knowledge is just what already exists. The real challenge is to create knowledge that does not exist. Okay. I think that is the idea that we sort of work on. And the way to do that is, again, disruption. Mess up the way that things are happening. And you have to do it like very, very carefully in Nepal, because some people get very offended. But yeah, that's the way you have to do it. Any questions?
But I'm not understanding what you are saying. I'm not understanding what you understand.
What I'm saying? Which part?
This last one.
The last part? Disruption को? एउटै तरिकामा काम गरेर नयाँ कुराहरू सिकिँदैन भनेको। हामीले जसरी पढ्छौँ, जसरी हाम्रो एजुकेसन सिस्टमले हामीलाई पढाउँछ, त्यसले नयाँ नलेज क्रिएट गर्नको लागि ठाउँ निकाल्दैन। नयाँ त्यो ठाउँ निकाल्नको लागि, to be able to have a space where you can think of new ideas, to create new things. नयाँ आफू वरिपरि भएकै प्रब्लम्सहरूको सल्युसन निकाल्ने, हैन? त्यो गर्नको लागि पढेर चाहिँ हुँदैन। संसारमा गएर केही ट्राई गरेर, नयाँ कुरा ट्राई गरेपछि मात्र हुन्छ। Being frustrated is the question. Well, the education system has worked then. It's not about being exceptional in that sense. I know. We're talking about how to change the system itself. I know. The system is working in some sense because they go through that system and they don't really question anything. I mean, you know, like the things that pollute, you know, like using plastic is not good. But people still do it. Why do they not stop is the question. Because just because like everyone else does it doesn't mean like you have to do it either, I know. But the way that you're raised to sort of replicate and continue doing the things that have been done before, that is the success of our system in many ways. So if you're not frustrated, then I guess it's time to get frustrated. Because if you're happy with the way that things are happening right now, you don't have to change anything, right? There's nothing wrong then. Any questions? No?
It's almost okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for your presentation.